Imagine having to start a fire in the middle of the mountains because your 6-year-old daughter is freezing. No wood, no branches, nothing. All you have is $2 million in cash inside bags. So you decide to burn it, bill by bill. As the flames devour what any family would call a generational dream, all you think about is your daughter shivering. This isn't a movie. It happened. And the man who did it had so much money he lost $2.1 billion a year just because rats ate the bills he buried. In this video, you'll discover how the richest men in organized crime history spent, hid, wasted, and lost the most obscene fortunes the planet has ever seen. Stay until the end because there's one boss whose eccentricity reached a level Hollywood hasn't dared to recreate yet. Let's start at the beginning because to understand the madness, you need to understand the numbers. Pablo Escobar at his peak earned $420 million a week. A week, not a month. His organization moved roughly 15 tons of white substance a day, generating a cash flow so absurd that Forbes placed him on its world's richest list 7 years in a row. We're talking about an estimated fortune ranging, depending on the source, from $3 to $30 billion. But here comes the part almost nobody tells you. Against all odds, having that much money became a monumental logistical problem. His own brother, Roberto Escobar, confessed it in a book published years later. Every year, they absorbed roughly $2.1 billion as natural loss. Why? Because they buried cash in stashes, false walls, beneath floor tiles, and secret basements scattered across Antioquia. Moisture rotted the bills. Rats ate them. They forgot where they were. The maps got lost. Roberto set an internal policy. $16 million a month minimum was the assumed cost of rats and humidity. Some estimates raise it to $42 million monthly from rodents alone. To keep the operation running, they spent over $2,500 a month on rubber bands, just to hold the stacks together. But stay with me, because what he did with the money when he could spend it is where this story turns truly surreal. Hacienda Napoles was his masterpiece of excess. 3,000 hectares in Colombia's Magdalena Medio region, and inside it things no oil sheikh would dare put on his estate. His son, Juan Pablo Escobar, described it in surgical detail years later. 27 artificial lakes, 100,000 fruit trees, the largest motocross track in all of Latin America, a Jurassic Park with life-size dinosaur replicas, some made with real bones so children could climb on them. 2 helipads, a 1,000-meter runway with its own gas station and mechanic shop to service the fleet of planes and motorcycles. 10 houses spread across the property. 3 different zoos, and inside those zoos, get this, he kept 1,200 exotic species: giraffes, elephants, zebras, dromedaries, ostriches, hippos, kangaroos, Amazon parrots. 1,700 employees worked to keep it all running. There was a 1934 Chevrolet deliberately riddled with bullet holes made to look like the car Bonnie and Clyde died in. Escobar admired Al Capone to the point of obsession. He named the estate Napoles after the Italian-American gangster. And at the ranch entrance, he installed as a monument the small plane that supposedly carried his first shipment of white substance to the United States. That plane is still there today. Now you need to understand something. All that spending was just the tip of the iceberg because inside the house the madness never stopped. His wife, Victoria Eugenia Henao, known as La Tata, received hair, manicure, and makeup services every day at her own home. But not just her, the household staff too. The cleaning maids had uniforms custom designed by professional seamstresses and took self-makeup courses. When the family moved to the Monaco building in Medellín's El Poblado neighborhood, an 8-story building bought entirely for them, Escobar had fresh flowers flown in on his private jet. From Bogotá, every morning, just to decorate the entrance. And here comes the detail that hits hardest the first time you hear it. The parties. For New Year's Eve, Escobar imported entire shipping containers of fireworks from China. Each container cost $50,000 at the time, and he bought 2. Half he burned with family and friends. The other half he handed out to his men. His son says many years there were so many leftovers they never even opened them. Themed parties were Latata's favorite. How did she handle the costumes? Simple. She sent a personal tailor or seamstress to each guest's house with orders to make the outfit to measure. Guests only had to stand still for fittings. On his birthdays, instead of receiving gifts, he raffled them. But not just anything. He raffled original paintings by Botero, Dali, Picasso, Velázquez. A single one of those canvases could be worth millions. And he gave his son things bordering on the insulting. When the boy turned 9, Escobar handed him a chest containing the original love letters Manuelita Sáenz had written to Simón Bolívar. Real letters, museum grade. At 11, Juan Pablo already owned 30 high-speed motorcycles, 30 jet skis, tricycles, ATVs, go-karts, and buggies from the best brands. At 13, he received his own bachelor apartment. Mirrored ceilings, futuristic bar, zebra skin floor, and a Venus chair. The boy's first communion was celebrated with chocolates flown in by private jet from Switzerland, and on the return trip the plane stopped in Paris to pick up 20 bottles of Petrus, one of the most expensive wines on the planet. He was 9 years old. But wait, because the money burned in the mountains, you need to hear in full. When Los Pepes and the police were closing in, Escobar fled with his family to a hideout deep in the Sierra. The cold was bitter. His little daughter Manuela began slipping into hypothermia. There was no dry wood, no blankets. So the richest man in Colombia did the only thing he had on hand. He set fire to $2 million in cash. Witnesses say the little girl fell asleep warmed by those green flames. That image, a father burning money to save his daughter, sums up everything. To him, money literally meant nothing. It was paper. He had so much it wouldn't fit in his properties. And speaking of properties, do you know how much Escobar offered to pay so the Colombian government would forgive his extradition? The country's entire foreign debt, $13 billion in 1984. He offered it seriously, in writing. The alternative he considered was simply staying and, in his words, eliminating everyone who chased him. But we'll get to that. Now let's move on to the partner who also dreamed big but almost always gets pushed to the background. Carlos Lehder Rivas, the crazy one. The German Colombian who co-founded the Medellín organization alongside Escobar and the Ochoa brothers. Lehder did something even Escobar didn't dare to do. He bought an island. Not just any island. Norman's Cay in the Bahamas, 112 kilometers off the Florida coast. 3 square kilometers of Caribbean paradise he acquired in 1978 for just over $3 million across several purchases. He turned it into a private logistics hub for the organization. An 1,100-meter runway, anti-detection radar, trained Dobermans, armed guards 24 hours a day. At peak operation, up to 3,000 kilos of white substance moved through that runway per hour. Per hour. It's estimated that 80% of the white substance flooding the United States in the early 80s passed through that islet. But Lehder didn't use the island just for work. It was his personal playground. He built a professional music studio there because he was an absolute fanatic of John Lennon and Ronnie Wood, the Rolling Stones guitarist. He set it all up to host rock stars at private parties. He even had a Colombian flag permanently raised and forced guests to sing the anthem. When the Bahamas finally seized the island after his capture, it was resold for $41 million. Later, like Escobar, twice offered to pay Colombia's entire foreign debt in exchange for not being extradited. Today, the plane that crashed trying to land at Norman's Cay still rests on the Caribbean seafloor and has become a tourist attraction for divers. When Lehder was extradited in 1987, his fortune was estimated between $8 and $9 billion. But here comes what you usually don't hear. The Colombian pattern of excess was copied to the letter by the Mexican bosses when they inherited the business. They added their own layers of madness. And the first star of that chapter is a man who never let himself be photographed and who moved more white substance than any human being in history. Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the Lord of the Skies. a nickname he earned because while everyone else trafficked in speedboats and small planes, he bought a fleet of Boeing 727s. Full commercial jets, like the ones that move passengers through any airport. Carrillo modified the Boeings to load tons of illegal merchandise into the cargo hold and flew them directly from Colombia to Mexico and onward to the southern United States. In 1995 alone, police sources estimated his operations generated $200 million a week. His accumulated fortune is estimated at $25 billion at the time of his death in 1997, a figure rivaling Escobar's. And here's the wildest detail about Amado Carrillo. In his final years, tired of running, he ordered a palace built in Hermosillo, Sonora. Not a mansion, an Arabian palace, designed in the style of 1001 Nights with domes, imported mosaics, and materials only found in Morocco and the Emirates. Neighbors nicknamed it the House of Kisses because the domes looked so much like Hershey's Kisses chocolates it was impossible not to laugh. He paid millions for it. He never lived to enjoy it. Authorities seized the property before construction was finished. It sat there, half-built, rusting for decades until it was finally auctioned off. His other Hermosillo mansion, sold recently, was valued at $5 million and had a pool, sprawling gardens, and 4 jacuzzis. But there's a detail that gives you chills. What did Amado Carrillo do with all that money in the end? He spent it on the one thing money can't really buy. He tried to buy himself a new face. He paid for plastic surgery at the Santa Monica Hospital in Mexico City to change his entire appearance, lose weight through liposuction, and vanish from the global radar. He died on the operating table on July 4, 1997. He was 40. His body appeared swollen, disfigured, unrecognizable. To this day, some believe that corpse wasn't him, that he faked his death, that he lives hidden under another identity somewhere in South America. The DEA never produced conclusive evidence. His fortune, those $25 billion, was never recovered. According to reports, it mostly served to pay massive bribes to high-ranking officials and police. Now let's move on to the man whose official fortune even exceeds Escobar's, according to American courts. Joaquin Guzman Loera, El Chapo. The U.S. government calculated during the Brooklyn trial that El Chapo's accumulated fortune was $12,666,191,704. An exact figure down to the last cent. Though his lawyer called it exaggerated, Judge Brian Cogan ordered him to return $12.6 billion as compensation for decades of operations. Other sources drawn from Mexican prosecutor files put it as high as $21.6 billion. To give you an idea, that figure placed him 33rd among the richest men on the planet, on the level of Michael Dell, founder of the computer company. And how did El Chapo spend it all? His former personal pilot, Miguel Angel Martinez, alias El Tololoche, told the jury. In the 90s, El Chapo had 4 private jets operating at the same time. Houses on every beach in Mexico, ranches in every state. One mansion alone, oceanfront in Acapulco with a private dock for his yacht named Chapito. Cost him $10 million in cash. $10 million in bills. His main ranch in Guadalajara had a pool, a tennis court, a train to tour the property, and a private zoo with tigers, lions, panthers, and deer. He also kept vaults capable of hiding up to $20 million in cash each. El Chapo traveled the world with his entourage. Argentina, Brazil, Aruba, Europe, Japan, Hong Kong, Thailand, Macau for gambling, and even Switzerland for rejuvenation treatments. His pilot earned $1 million a year. The pilot alone. In a single month, El Chapo bought over 50 Buick, Thunderbird, and Cougar cars to give to his workers. Each employee picked the model they wanted, and here's where the most symbolic object in this whole story appears. A Colt .38 pistol, monogrammed with his initials JGL on the barrel, the grip completely covered in white and black diamond inlays. A weapon whose actual function, shooting, was almost incidental. It was a jewel, a statement. Another of his pistols, a Colt .45 Gold Cup, was engraved with the phrase Billionaire Forbes 701, referring to his Forbes ranking in 2009. Its estimated value was 4 million pesos. But stay with me because there's a detail about El Chapo almost nobody knows. In his mansions, when authorities raided them, they found bottles of reserve European wines priced in 5 figures each. A Barcelona jersey signed by Ronaldinho and stars of that era, kept as a personal relic. And solid gold bars stored in industrial quantities because, as he well knew, gold doesn't get eaten. Gold doesn't get wet. Gold doesn't lose value to inflation. It was his ultimate insurance. Speaking of indestructible wealth. No classic Mexican boss symbolized brazen luxury better than Rafael Caro Quintero, the boss of bosses. Co-founder of the now-defunct Guadalajara organization alongside Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo and Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, Caro Quintero built a fortune estimated at the time of his original arrest in 1985 at $500 million. $500 million in 1985, adjusted for inflation, that's over $1.5 billion today. And he spent it on things only someone with an ego the size of Sinaloa could imagine. In the 3 weeks he spent on the run in Costa Rica before being captured, he rented out the most exclusive nightclubs in San Jose for private parties with his crew. He bought 4 properties in elite Costa Rican residential zones valued at $1.9 million at the time. One of them, Quinta La California in Alajuela, cost him $800,000 and covered 7,757 square meters with a pool. When police caught him, they found in that house $300,000 in cash, jewelry valued at $1 million, and 2 luxury cars. The private flight that took him from Mexico to Costa Rica cost $10,000. Just the flight. His entourage included 7 people, among them his underage girlfriend, Sara Cosio, niece of a former governor of Jalisco. And here's a detail few know. While he was a fugitive during the 9 years after his 2013 release, Caro Quintero kept generating income through a network of businesses run by relatives and associates. Phone booths, real estate, car dealerships, restaurants, footwear, spas, fuel distribution. A parallel empire, apparently fully legal, that served as a front for laundering the proceeds of his operations. A persistent legend in Mexico says that in his best years he offered to pay his country's entire foreign debt in exchange for his freedom. He himself denied it in an interview with journalist Jesus Lemus in the book Los Malditos. But the myth survives because it perfectly captures the absurd scale of that fortune, the fascination with exotic animals. That was the signature the Mexican bosses copied directly from the Medellín group. Salcedo, a specialist in Mexican public security, said it plainly in an interview. Owning a private zoo became a prerequisite for belonging to the wholesale aristocracy. No tigers, no status, no lions, no league. And here the story turns sinister, because not all of them kept the animals as pets. Heriberto Lascano, founding leader of Los Zetas, kept crocodiles and tigers specifically for one purpose: to devour enemies. According to intelligence reports, several rivals ended up inside those animals' stomachs. And that brings me to another level of eccentricity: the weapons. At the National Defense Ministry's Museum of Narcotics in Mexico City, nearly 24 firearms seized from bosses are on display. Pistols with over 100 diamonds embedded in the grip, guns plated in 24-karat gold. Some bear the assassin's alias engraved on the barrel: El Matador, El Embajador. Others have Versace logos cast in white gold. The approximate price of one of these pieces runs between $20,000 and $30,000, the equivalent, curiously, of 2 kilos of white substance on the street. Add to that the watches. Rolexes inlaid with gold and diamonds are standard currency. When several members of the Sinaloa organization were raided in Spain a few years ago, the civil guard seized close to 30 high-end watches, over 50 solid gold chains, investment coins, physical gold, and sports vehicles whose individual price exceeded 500,000 euros per transaction. Lamborghini Urus, Rolls-Royce Phantom, Cadillac Escalade, Ferrari, Porsche, Audi RS, Bentley convertibles. All armored. But we couldn't end this tour without talking about the Beltran Leyva brothers, a family of 5 Sinaloan brothers who for 20 years ruled from the Pacific to the northern border. Arturo, El Barbas, Self-proclaimed boss of bosses, lived surrounded by a level of exhibitionism that became his sentence. Mansions across Mexico, Estado de Mexico, Morelos, Mexico City, and the United States. Private clandestine runways hidden in the Sierra. And according to DEA files, a monthly payroll of bribes that included $450,000 a month for former Mexican federal czar Noé Ramirez Mandujano, in the case documented in 2005. One of his key men in the security apparatus received similar sums. The organization paid more in monthly bribes than the annual budget of some Mexican municipalities. But what truly defined the Beltran Leyvas was social ostentation. Their parties in Cuernavaca were legendary. They directly hired Ramon Ayala and his Bravos del Norte, Los Cadetes de Linares, regional groups from Torrente, top-level regional Mexican artists. Some of these musicians were detained in December 2009 during a holiday party when the Navy raided the property. And in journalist Anabel Hernandez's later investigations, a detail emerged that shook Mexico. Arturo Beltran Leyva allegedly maintained relationships with figures from the entertainment world to whom he handed absurd sums. $200,000 monthly as a personal payroll to a single TV host, according to testimony from a former partner of the boss collected in the book Emma y las otras señoras del narco. For context, a low-ranking enforcer in his organization earned $5,000 a month. The host made 40 times more without firing a single shot. And in the category of pure excess, none compared to Edgar Valdez Villarreal, alias La Barbie. American-born, light-eyed, this boss of the Beltran Leyva armed wing had a fixed protocol. He'd shut down entire venues in Acapulco's Diamante zone, clubs like Palladium or Clásico del Mar, for himself, his partners, and his gunmen. He ordered Argentine steaks, French Moet et Chandon champagne by the case, and forced the orchestras to play his own corrido, the one he'd commissioned. He paid in cash, walked out without flinching, and the next day moved to another city to repeat the operation. His facial masks contained imported sheep placenta. His wardrobe came from brands only sold in Milan and Paris. When they captured him in August 2010, he wore a Rolex on his wrist valued at nearly $100,000. There's a pattern that repeats in every one of these cases worth underlining. The money from these operations can't be spent legally. You can't walk into an Apple store and pay for a Vision Pro with a stack of bills without setting off every alarm. You can't buy a Bugatti registered in your name. You can't put your fortune in a bank. So ironically, the money from organized crime becomes an uncontrollable beast. It grows faster than its owners can spend it. And when they hit a critical point, the boss is forced to invent ever more eccentric ways to burn capital. Buy islands, build Arabian palaces in the middle of the desert, pay soccer players for private friendly matches, import Siberian tigers, build ranches with private golf courses, install gold-plated bathrooms like those seized from the Caborca organization. Paint the walls of houses with stacks of bills behind them. Literally fill the walls, and that's not a metaphor. In a Sinaloa house raided in Mexico City in 2018, authorities discovered a hidden system where $1 million in cash was packed into a secret compartment between two walls. And here's a detail I find especially revealing. Mike Vigil, former head of DEA International Operations, explained it years ago in an InfoBay interview. The top-level criminals often buy real estate from normal families and let them live there for free. In exchange for what? For guarding the money buried in the garden, hidden in the walls, or stashed in the basement. Those families aren't direct accomplices, they're involuntary custodians. And often they don't even know exactly how much cash they're guarding. Some estimates suggest 10% of all the cash fortune of Latin American criminal organizations is sitting right now in forgotten basements, sealed walls, or gardens about to be dug up by new owners with no idea what's beneath their feet. And now the final detail, the most absurd of all, the one I promised at the beginning. At the children's birthday parties of the Colombian patrons' kids, the piñatas weren't filled with candy, they were filled with stacks of $100 bills. The The children broke them open and waterfalls of cash rained down on the little guests. Juan Pablo himself confirms it in his books. And if that weren't enough, there are versions not fully confirmed but widely reported that some international artists like Chespirito and company charged sums of up to $1 million to perform at those private parties. Carlos Villagran Kiko said it himself in an interview. They offered him the figure. He refused out of fear. But others accepted. And as if all that weren't enough, there was a small Christmas eccentricity that defines Escobar better than anything. At Hacienda Napoles in the Colombian tropics where snow has never fallen, he ordered an industrial ice-making machine, the kind used in professional skating rinks, installed just to give his children a white Christmas. He hauled it from Medellín into the heart of Antioquia by convoy. And on any given December 24th, the kids played with artificial snow on the lawn in 35 degrees Celsius ambient heat. If his little daughter asked for a new animal for the estate's zoo, it didn't matter if it lived in Africa. He sent a private plane to fetch it, and if what she asked for was impossible, her father invented stories. Like the unicorn. A legend says that for one of the girls' birthdays, Escobar had a fake horn nailed to a white horse and wings stapled on to make it look like a mythological unicorn. The boss's wife, Victoria Henao, flatly denied it in her book and even published the photo of the real birthday. But the myth persists because it fits everything else. But here's the final irony. All that obscene fortune, all that cinematic excess, all those private zoos, Arabian palaces, private islands, jets, diamonds, gold bars, wives with daily manicure service, sons with bachelor apartments at 13, fireworks worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, French wines flown in by jet, money burning in bonfires, all of it, in the end, ended the same way. Prison, a bullet, the operating table, the desert, an unmarked grave, a mansion seized and auctioned by the state. Lehder lives today in Germany with 1,000 euros in his pocket, according to what he himself told Semana. Poor but free. Escobar buried in Medellín. El Chapo serving life in a Colorado federal prison under maximum security. Caro Quintero extradited to the United States. Amado Carrillo officially dead under the scalpel. The hippos keep breeding uncontrolled in the Magdalena River. Every time you see someone flaunting a gold pistol, a tiger chained in a yard, or a fleet of private jets, remember this. Criminal money doesn't get spent. It evaporates. It rots. The rats eat it, literally. It burns one cold night in a makeshift fire, or it gets buried in a stash whose map dies with its owner. Tell me in the comments which of all these extravagances strikes you as the most absurd, if you believe there's still buried money from Pablo Escobar waiting for someone to find it. And subscribe to the channel because in the next videos we're going to enter even darker territories of Latin American organized crime.